to Harvard. We've got a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll out today. It's a doozy. It's got a lot of good news for President Obama. NBC News political director and chief White House correspondent Chuck Todd's here with us with On the Numbers. Chuck, thank you so much for joining. This is one of those news-making polls. It is. Let's start with the President Obama. The president's job approval up into the sweet spot, 53%, a 15-point turnaround from 3 down to 12 up. 74% say they like the way he handled Tucson. No surprise there. But look at the bunching up, the positive nature of these numbers. 15-point switch around. What do you make of it? Well, look,
this is his highest approval rating since July of 2009. Okay, so this is basically 18 months ago. This is before the healthcare town halls exploded and before healthcare basically started bringing down his job rating. It's 3 parts, Chris. 1 part Tucson, 1 part lame duck, and 1 part optimism, frankly, from the American public about the economy. Now, the question is this all just short term? Is this just a little bump that he's getting, which, of course, comes at a great time for him politically because he's got the State of the Union next week? Or is this the beginnings of a foundation that he has and a reminder to Republicans? And, look, we'll find out in the next couple months.
Well, David Gregory likes to say on Sunday, let's unpack that. So let's unpack that. Let's take a look right now at how he's dealing with these issues. In dealing with the GOP, I'm looking at it. It's interesting. 55% say that the president has struck the right balance in dealing with Republicans. 26% say he's too inflexible. 15% he's too quick to give. And I love these numbers because it says basically the far left, I suppose, is in only the minority, 1/6 of the people, which doesn't surprise me. I think that's about the number of the far left who say he's not left enough right now, now, not the last 2 years, now. And overwhelmingly, the public seems to think he's got the right balance between give and take here.
Right. And then you're just putting up on screen, look at where the 55% figure goes when you talk about congressional Republicans, which is they're being seen as too inflexible. So this is a real, when you look at this poll, on one hand, yes, there's a lot of good news here for President Obama. But the more important thing about this poll is the warning signs that are there for the Republicans. Here they are going into the State of the Union week. Okay, we're less than a week away. And the public is basically saying, we're giving President Obama the benefit of the doubt right now. We think he will cut deals with you. We think he is going to work with you. You've got to prove to us that you're going to work with him. You've got to prove to us that you're ready to govern. So there's a burden, as one of our pollsters said on this morning to me, there's a burden of proof for Republicans. There's a benefit of doubt for the president. And frankly, 2 months ago, you would have thought it would have been the other way around, right? That the public, after the elections, were saying, hey, now the burden of proof is on you, President Obama, and quickly so far, first 2 months, and you combine lame duck and Tucson, how he's handled himself, he's getting good marks from the American public.
But you think the vote today might come across as a bit Mickey Mouse, this vote to basically repeal, knowing that's not going to happen. Do the voters see through that? Can you guesstimate whether they're going to see it as a game or as a serious policy challenge?
It's funny. One of our pollsters said on our analysis call, and when we break down the numbers when we go through it in the morning, said, you know what, you can almost sense that the public is already cynical to the political process in Washington a little bit. When you see that inflexible issue, that you see a little bit of the cynicism about the process seeping in here. And that's got to be the warning sign to Republican leaders. Look, Boehner and McConnell know this. They've always been very ginger about how to handle this health care thing. On one hand, yes, they've got to give the base what they wanted. They ran on this. On the other hand, they know at the end of the day, they've got to win over moderates if they actually do want to govern the country from the White House.
They're beginning, I know I'm a student of history like you, and I tell you, when you look back to the Congress that came in, Republican House that came in after World War II, and it was their turn. 20 years of Democratic rule with the New Deal and the Fair Deal. They finally got in on a strategy or a slogan of had enough, which was a great slogan. They got in. All they did was hold probes, and all they did was do all this nasty stuff. They limited the president's term to 2 terms. Every way they could sort of dump on the Roosevelt tradition, but nothing really positive. And the public threw them right out in 48 and Harry Truman. Let's take a look at the way the public looks at the future substantively. Look at these numbers. 53% now think the direction of the country will get better in 5 years. 37% in August, so that's ticking up. People, even though the jobless numbers aren't that great, they're 9.4 as opposed to 9.8, I guess, is that the effect of the stock market? What's going on? Why are they getting more optimistic?
It's funny. All of the economic numbers in our poll were more positive, were more optimistic. So there's one of 2 ways to read this. Either the public thinks it's just, we finally hit bottom and there's just no way it's going to get worse. It has to get better. There's another theory that our pollsters posited, which was, you know what? Right after the holidays, people do feel a little bit better. They had, you know, they gave gifts, they bought, they spent money, they see things churning. Throw in the warm feeling that they had, that they felt as if the nation kind of came together a little bit in the wake of the Tucson tragedy, and so that they're just feeling good again about America. Now, that doesn't mean they think the economy, they still think the #1 problem is the unemployment. When it comes to the economy, is the issue of unemployment. All of the problems are still there. That's why you look at these numbers. How short-term are they? We'll see. It's a warning sign to Republicans that, look, be careful here. You have not won. You don't have a majority coalition supporting you yet on your ability to govern. You had a majority coalition that got you into office, but they're not yet impressed with how you're going to govern. Right. At least they weren't happy then. And the president's still got a lot of strengths that you got to deal with.
And here's something the Democrats have to worry about. Even if the president becomes personally more popular, here's the objective reality that's going to face him, I think, next November. A 12-point gap now on whether America's in a state of decline. The gap was 34 points in August, and 40% now think the economy will get better next year. That's up 8. But here's my concern as an American, that we're going to have real objective problems that really have nothing to do with the president's popularity. He could get relatively more popular than anybody else in the business, including Mitt Romney or Sarah Palin or anyone else. And still, if you have states like Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, where the economy is down, he could lose the general election next year.
Well, that's right, and this goes to this. First of all, that's why the president first stop Wisconsin right after the State of the Union. No accident. They didn't use a dartboard on that.
Same as the Republicans picking the RNC chair out of there.
Exactly. This is no accident. Wisconsin is probably the best petri dish of where the Midwest is heading in 2012. But I have to say this, Chris. You know this. The more optimistic candidate always wins presidential elections, right? The guy that looks like, that the country feels like, boy, he's the more hopeful guy. You know, the Reagan-Carter comparison, you had Bush and Clinton in '92. Frankly, you had Bush and Gore in 2000, and then you had Obama and McCain.
You think like me.
And the thing is can the Republicans have a primary debate that ends up becoming very negative, probably a presidential primary, and then produce a nominee that will be the optimistic guy? Now, I'll say this: Huckabee and Romney have the potential of being optimistic guys. They both want to be that guy. They both have that in, you know, that sort of part of, I think, where they've had success in the past is when they've channeled that optimism. Can the Republican primary that takes place allow them to be that person? That's going to be a test.
You know, it's exactly the way I do it. I always say to people, close your eyes and imagine which of the two candidates is out in the sun, waving in a car, going somewhere optimistic, and which is in behind a desk somewhere. You know, the Bob Doles, the Dick Nixons. The guy's sunny, whether it's Reagan or it's this president or it's Jack Kennedy, those guys, and they tend to be guys, win. And the guy who looks like a desk jockey holding on to that desk loses.
Look, issues matter, but tone and optimism does too.
Okay, thank you so much, Chuck. I love this Wisconsin. It's like the days of Tim Russert. We're already looking at the state that matters, you know, like Tim used to do with Florida and Ohio.
It's going to tell us about the Midwest. That Midwest is moving. That's the most fluid part of the electorate. It's where Republicans are going to win or lose the White House.
You are the smartest. You know why? Because I agree with you. But besides that, this is from Scranton to Oshkosh. Keep your eye on Oshkosh.